Hello and welcome to this video. So in the last video we made an introduction to factoring quadratic expressions, and we looked at how to factor quadratic expressions where the coefficient of x squared is 1. Okay, and if you never had a chance to watch that video, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description box. So I want us to move further and look at how to factor quadratic expressions where the coefficient of x is not 1. For example, for this case, the coefficient of x squared is 3. So how do we go about it? How do we factor such a quadratic expression? So in the last video, we said that this coefficient of x represents the sum of two numbers, okay? The sum of two numbers. And then we said that 6, for this case, was representing the, for those examples that we were looking at, that is when the coefficient is 1. So 6 was representing the product of two numbers. But for this case, since the coefficient is not 1, what we are going to do, or what is going to represent the product of these two numbers, is 3 times 6. Okay? So when we multiply 3 times 6, it's going to be 18. So 18 is going to be the product of those two numbers. Remember, we could also do the same for the other examples, that is where the coefficient is 1, because if we have 1 here, 1 times 6 is going to remain 6, and that is why we were taking this one to be the product of these two numbers. But for this case we have 3. So we have 3 for this case. So the product of these two numbers is going to be represented by the coefficient of x squared times 6. Okay, so we can have this. So the sum of these two numbers is 11. And the product of these two numbers is 3 times 6, which is 18. So the product is 18. So what we need to do is to ask ourselves, which are these two numbers that if you add them, you're going to get 11. And when you multiply them, we are going to get 18. Which are these two numbers? So, as I told you in the last video, an easier way to go about it is to list the factors of 18. The numbers that when you multiply them, you get 18. So, we have 1 and 18. We have 2 and 9. We have 3 and 6. I believe those are the ones. So, let's start with 1 and 18. When you add 1 and 18, do you get 11? You don't. What about 2 and 9? Yes, you get 11. So 2 plus 9 is 11. 2 times 9 is 18. So these are the two numbers that we are interested in. So we're going to have 2 and 9. So then what we are going to do, we are going to factor this expression by grouping. What do I mean by grouping? Okay, before we go there, we are going to rewrite this middle term. Okay, this middle term, that is 11x, we are going to rewrite it in terms of 2 and 9. Okay, this is how we are going to write it. We're going to write it as 3x squared plus 9x plus 2x. Okay, 9x and 2x. You can start with any. You can even start with 2x plus 9x and then plus 6. Okay. So that is it. So you can see 9x plus 2x is the same thing as 11x. So then what we do from there is that we group them. We group this expression into 2. This is what I mean. We're going to group them this way. So let me use a different color so that you can not get confused. We're going to group them this way. That is one group, and that is the other group. Okay, that is how we are going to group them. And then we now start with this group, and we identify the common factor. So for this case, we can factor out x. So x is common for 3 and 9. So we can factor out x, and inside the bracket, we are going to have 3x plus 3. Oh, sorry. We can also factor 3. I'm sorry for that. So we can also factor out 3. So, okay. We can factor out 3 so that we have 3x. So 3 is common and x is also common. I'm sorry for that. So what we are going to be left with inside the bracket is going to be x. Okay, so 3x times x is going to be 3x squared, and then plus 9 divided by 3, we are going to have 3, and x by x is 1. So x is going to disappear for that case. So let's see whether it's true. 3x times x is 3x squared, and then 3x times 3 is going to be 9x. So, and then what we do, we are going to have this other group or this other bracket. Whatever we have on this bracket, we write it on this other bracket, that is x plus 3. And then we ask ourselves this question: what can we multiply this bracket with to give us this one? Okay, what factor can we multiply this x plus 3 with to get this one? So just look at this. We can multiply it by 2. When we multiply it by 2, it's going to be 2x, okay, plus 2 times 3 is 6. And then what we do is that we pick this and this. So it's going to be 3x plus 2. So we group it that way. And then we now take x plus 3. And that is how to factor that quadratic expression. So let's look at yet another example so that we can understand in a much better way. So let's say we have 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. So that's a quadratic equation. So as we said, we are going to identify the sum and the product. So for this case, we said that this middle term is what represents the sum. The sum of two numbers is 5, and then the product of those two numbers is this coefficient of x squared times c, or rather 2. So it's 2 times 2 is 4. So the product is 4. So we are going to identify these two numbers. That if we add them, we get 5, and if we multiply them, we get 4. So as I told you, a faster way to deal with it is to list the factors of 4. So the factors of 4 is 1 and 4. We can also have 2 and 2. Okay, so let's start with this one. 1 and 4. When we multiply them, we get 4. What about when we add them? 1 plus 4. Is it 5? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Then we have 2 times 2. Oh, I'm sorry for that. So 2 times 2 is 4. But 2 plus 2, is it 5? It is not. So the two numbers that we are interested in is 1 and 4. So after we have done that, we are going to rewrite this middle term, that is 5x, in terms of 1 and 4. And it is going to be 2x squared plus 1x can just be written as x, and then plus 4x. So you can start with any, you can start with 4x or x, it doesn't matter much, and then plus 2. And then, as we said, we are going to group them into two. We are going to group them into two. We're going to have that one and that one. Okay. Then, we're going to start with this first one. We identify the common factor. And for this case, the common factor is x. So we factor it out that way. And then inside the bracket, we're going to have 2x plus 1. Okay. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 1 times x is x. And then what we have here, that is 2x plus 1, we are going to have it here also, 2x plus 1. Okay? And then we now ask ourselves, what number do we multiply this bracket with to get this? Just try to figure it out. It turns out that we are going to multiply this by 2. So that we are going to have 2x by 2 is 4x. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Then after we have done that, we are going to have x plus 2. We are going to group them this way. X and then plus 2. And then 2x plus 1. And that way we have factorized that expression. If you want to confirm whether it's correct, you just need to expand this or to multiply this bracket by this other bracket. And you see you're going to get that expression. So let's look at maybe one final example. Okay. And this time round, I want us to use a negative. Though it's the same thing as for the ones we have done. So let's say let's have 3x squared plus x minus 10. Okay. So let's have that. So as we said, we need to identify the two numbers that are going to give us a sum of. So we said the sum is represented by the coefficient of x. For this case, it's 1. Okay. So the two numbers have a sum of 1 and they have a product of, we said we multiply 3 and negative 10. So it's going to be negative 10. Okay. So as I told you, okay, it's supposed to be 3x squared plus x plus minus 10. So this is minus 10. But because we said that a plus followed by a negative, we just represent it as a single negative sign. It's going to be that way. So we're going to use the product as negative 10 times 3. That is negative 30. Negative 30. So let's try to find those two numbers. The two numbers have a product of negative 30 and a sum of 1. So as I told you, we need to list the factors of 30. Just first assume the negative. Assume the negative for now. So the factors of 30, we have 1 and 30. Then we have 2 and 15. We have 3 and 10. We have 5 and 6. I believe we are done. Yes. So let's start with 1 and 30. Is there a way we can have the sum, or we can play around with negatives until we get a sum of 1? I don't think it's possible for that one. It's far beyond this sum. There's no way we can have, okay, let's say we have negative 1 plus that. It's not going to be 1. Let's say we have 1 and negative 30. There's no way we'll get a sum of 1. So let's go to the other one. If we have a negative 2 here, negative 2 plus 15 is not going to be 1. Negative 2, okay, 2 and negative 15 is also not going to give us a sum of 1. Okay, so let's move on to the other one. Let's say we have negative 3 and 10. When you add them, you don't get 1. If we have negative 3 and negative 10, it's also not going to give us 1. Okay, let's go to the other one. Negative, let's say negative 5 plus 6. Negative 5 plus 6 is 1. Okay. What about negative 5 times 6? Is it negative 30? It is negative 30. So those are the two numbers that we are interested in. Negative 5 and 6. Okay. So as we said, we are going to rewrite this middle term in terms of negative 5 and 6. And what are we going to have? It's going to be 3x squared minus 5x plus 6x. Okay, so that is going to be, that is the same as writing x, or rather 1x, because negative 5x plus 6x is x, and then plus, or rather, okay, plus negative 10, but it's let's just write as negative 10. Okay, so as we said, we are going to group them. We are going to group them this way. We are going to have that one and that one. And then we start with this first one and ask ourselves, what is the common factor? Do we have a common factor here? And I can see we have a common factor, that is x. So we factor out x, and inside the bracket, we're going to be left with 3x minus 5. And whatever we are left here with in this bracket, we also write it in this other bracket, 3x minus 5. Okay? And then we ask ourselves, what number can we, or what factor can we multiply this bracket with to give us this? Just think about it. And I can see that we need to multiply this bracket by 2 to get to this bracket. So it's 2 times 3x is 6x, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So we are going to pick these two. So it's going to be x plus 2 and then 3x minus 5. And that way we have factored that expression. If you want to see whether you have done it the right way, you just need to expand this, and you will get it as your answer. So allow me to leave it at that. So thank you so much for watching, and let's meet in the next video.